Hi there, my name is Edward and I'm the founder and president of the Emerson Academy. This is a re-recording of a workshop that we did for the Mechanical Contractors Association of BC. We have a couple of assets and footage that we will be providing for MCABC, but we also wanted to re-record this workshop given that they might be using it for some training video. With that in mind, we're going to get straight into it and we're going to be going over the same demos, the same presentation and everything as well. Through MCABC, you'll be able to access all the assets that they provide for you as a result of this workshop. Let's get straight into it. First off, for some introductory notes, this workshop was made possible thanks to MCABC and thanks to Maddie and the Davison Bros for sponsoring the event, and NextGen, as well as Eddie and Kathia and the rest of the team for doing all the behind the scenes logistics and organization. Today I'm going to be speaking about artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. In my humble opinion, right now we are at the beginning of a new technological revolution, which is known as the AI revolution. It will dwarf that of the internet, smartphones, and computers. With that in mind though, there's a lot of hype that is kind of happening right now in the industry. And we're going to cut through all that essentially today. And my goal is simply to show you the capabilities of what these tools can do today. We're going to focus primarily on the practical side of ChatGPT. Some quick facts which are important to mention is that ChatGPT became the fastest consumer app to reach 100 million users. It did this in a period of 2 months, which is completely unprecedented. For some comparisons, it took TikTok 9 months to do this. In comparison again to ChatGPT's 2 months, it took Instagram 3 years to do this, and it took Facebook 5 years to do this. And we're talking about the fastest growing apps in all of history. ChatGPT blew them away in just 2 months. It goes to show the transformation that we're kind of living in right now with this tool. There's a key benefit to be had if we learn how to use it appropriately. Another stat worth pointing out is that right now about 92% of Fortune 500 companies have adopted ChatGPT into their daily workflows and are essentially using it for different employees and different parts of their business every single day. So, given the fact that we have this tremendous adoption, the question would be, why are we not hearing about it every single day in our lives? There is some aspect of this which reaches the mainstream news, but it's still not the computer, it's still not the internet. And the reality is that if you still walk into a random room, only about 1 in 10 people will have used ChatGPT in its proper ways, which means that there's a tremendous opportunity for the people watching and trying to learn how to use this tool, that when you go into these random rooms after you watch this video, you will be part of that 10% who has adopted this tool as part of this early adopters, early majority kind of crowd. So these tools have so much potential, and hopefully you learn at least one thing today that will give you this advantage either in your personal life or in your business as well. The agenda of topics that we're going to be covering is essentially the following. We're going to be looking at the basics of ChatGPT, and then after the basics, where I show you a little bit about how the UI works and do some little demos with the main aspects of it, we're going to be jumping into 3 very practical and specialized demos within the mechanical contractors industry. These have been prepared ahead of time thanks to Eddie and the collaboration that we did leading up to this workshop. We're going to be doing one where we use ChatGPT for a project schedule. After that, we're going to be using it as well for finding information in a very long document, which is essentially like a handbook or a specifications guide. And finally, we're going to use ChatGPT as well to do some interpretation and understanding of legal documents. After that, I'll provide some small recommendations for how you can take these concepts and learnings that you had today and extend it on your own if you are interested in learning more about it. Some background information about who I am. It was mentioned in the presentation, but I will reintroduce myself. My name is Edward Garza. I am a graduate from UBC Vancouver. I have a dual degree in business and computer science. I primarily work right now as a software engineer in the financial technology industry. I work on infrastructure, I work on consumer products, and so on. But a lot of my work experience extends a little bit beyond that as well. I've worked in manufacturing, I've worked in cabinetry, I've worked with computer hardware, and I've worked also in these different entrepreneurial kind of areas like business, marketing, sales, and so on. Currently, as the founder of Emerson Academy, what I'm doing with these set of workshops is trying to provide an understanding of these practical AI tools for people outside of the technical community so they have the same advantage that the people within software and within tech do right now. So that's it for the introduction. Let's get started. Let's get straight into the demos. We're going to be starting with the basics of ChatGPT like I mentioned before. And let's start off with an introduction. So ChatGPT is nothing more than a web and a mobile app, similar to the other apps that you interact with on the internet. The kind of application that it kind of falls under as a classification, you could say, is one of chatbot. But unlike chatbots that we're used to seeing on maybe a customer page or customer support or a banking page and so on, these chatbots behave in very different ways. Therefore, the kind of label that we use for it is kind of like an AI chatbot rather than a general chatbot. And the key difference is kind of the way that they're designed or that they're built. A past chatbot is something that behaves kind of like a decision tree, whereas a new one has an element of real intelligence, that is the AI aspect of it. So here's an example of what a past chatbot kind of looks like behind the scenes. You may have done one of these yourself, or maybe you've worked with someone who has kind of designed one of these themselves as well. Typically, the way you build these is you have a UI backend that you, the company owner, typically have access to, and you create all these different branches and streams for how a customer can use the chatbot on the front end to interact with your business. And the reason why you might want to do this is to kind of reduce the personnel that you have in customer service and automate this in a semi-automated way. This works well for any kind of like common questions, frequently asked questions like pricing, anything related to the products and services that you offer, or if you want to do like a booking system as well. But the difference is, again, with the chatbot, with the AI chatbot, is that it's kind of like a super tutor with, a photographic memory. It will actually understand the things that you ask it. When you feed it documents, it's actually able to transform them, and you don't have to program these things ahead of time. So we'll see a couple of examples of what that looks like in practice. But again, a great analogy for this is let's do a comparison of these AI chatbots like ChatGPT with something like Google Search, something that we're used to using every single day. So a good analogy is that Google Search is kind of like this librarian. You go to a librarian, you're asking it for a book or maybe a suggestion on a book on a topic and so on, and it can kind of point you in the right direction. It doesn't remember every single book. It probably has not read every single book, but it has a general mechanism for being able to guide you to the fiction section or the horror section or any of these sections. The difference with ChatGPT is that it's kind of like this super intelligent tutor that has read every single book in the library. And not only has it read every single book, but it has a photographic memory where it never forgets the books that it's read. So when you ask it questions, it can actually have a conversation and interact with you as if that book is top of mind, essentially. Not only does it have some context related to a summary of the book, but it can also point you to a very specific page or passage, and it has the ability to think critically about it, to have interpretation beyond a keyword search, which is kind of what Google does. And that difference is obviously transformational. It is fascinating how we've gone from something that is matching one-on-one with these keywords with Google, for example, to something like ChatGPT, where it's going to be this evolving conversation that can take you in different ways. One example for something that you might be used to doing is, suppose you have a leaky faucet in your house, and you're looking to identify the key mechanism of what went wrong, what's causing this problem. If you were to do this with Google, for example, you would straight up put into Google how to fix a leaking faucet. And you'll get you'll get a set of videos, you'll get a set of articles, you'll get a set of forums like Reddit or third-party forums as well that will kind of point you in different ways. But you as the person who is conducting the search still have to do that last effort of sifting through the articles, maybe opening up a set of tabs and trying to really identify where that information that closely resembles the problem that you have. So, comparison to pre-internet, this was transformational because before you had to maybe call a neighbor or you had to go to the library, you had to do all these different things. Whereas with Google, you had it in a single place. And there is an element where there's a search algorithm that is ranking the results based on how good based on how good these articles kind of match against the keywords that you put in. But in comparison with ChatGPT, what we'll see in a couple of minutes is that when you ask it the same question, it's going to grab all those resources that you saw on Google and it's going to synthesize it into a single answer. So it's going to get a better answer essentially based on, well, the quality of the answer is going to be based on how good your question is. But what you'll see is that even if you're a little bit ambiguous or not as clear about your specific problem, it starts this conversation that can continue to evolve. So you'll get some general information about how to fix like a leaky faucet, but you can then specify the manufacturer is X, the problem seems to be that it's leaking around here, and as you provide that additional information, it can kind of take you in these dynamic branches that it's creating in real time. So let's get straight into it. Let's look at the actual platform and I'll explain to you in real time the different parts of on the platform and the things we're going to be encountering. So this is the typical view of ChatGPT. I'm not going to waste any more time. We're going to get straight into what this looks like in real time. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to open up a window with ChatGPT. Again, there's two mechanisms where how you can get here. You can search up ChatGPT on Google, and typically it is the first or second link. Right now it is the second link right here, which is chatgpt.com. Recently they bought the domain chat.com as well, so that will redirect you to the main page as well. Now, ChatGPT is an app that is accessible to everyone. All you need essentially is either a mobile phone and to download the app, or with the browser, or a computer as well, and you can just use it directly on the browser. You don't have to log in anymore. Previously, you have to log in to use the service, but now you can, I could take this, open it up in incognito mode, and I have the same app right there. I can type in a simple message like, hey there, and just like that, it started a conversation. Now, I'm going to use my account just to showcase some of the customizations that we can have if we do manage to create an account and do that on our own. But it's, again, given the fact that so many people have adopted the app and how fast it's grown, one of the things that we kind of have to get over, one of these hurdles with technology, is that it's not meant to be a complicated tool. It's not meant to be something that's very difficult to use. It's meant to be like an iPhone, very approachable, very simple and intuitive to use, such that you can essentially adopt it very fast without all these, potential problems along the way. So we saw how we can start a chat. All we have to do is type in a message. Again, I'm just going to introduce myself. Hey there. And we started a chat. Similar to any messaging application, your messages are going to be on the right-hand side, and then the messages from the AI chatbot are going to be on the left-hand side. And that's going to continue as the conversation evolves. So I'm just going to extend this and say, who are you? Just to be a little bit playful. It says, I'm ChatGPT, an AI assistant here to help you with whatever you need. So that's it. One input prompt, and that's where you ask the questions. And through the chat interface is where you get the answers. Let's go through the UI a little bit more. On the left-hand side, if I click right here, we have a side nav where it shows you all my chat history basically for all the different chats that I've had. So anytime I start a conversation, typically what I want to do is create a separate chat window for it, and that way I can have them concentrated on different topics or different questions that I ask. Very similar to how you talk with one friend and another friend and so on. So you see my history of chats. I can, for example, go to I can click on this one from yesterday, and then I can click back into this one, and we're back at the original chat that we were at before. In addition to that, we have this section up here for something known as custom GPTs, which is a section we'll be covering a bit later on, but I just wanted to point that out for now. I can click the menu again and close the chat right there. There's the new chat window right there, and that takes me back into a new chat. Or again, I can hover over here and then go back to the previous chat. On the right-hand side, we have a menu for different types of settings or personalizations that we can do. We're not going to look at these too much in depth right now. We will kind of look at them as they come up, but I just wanted to show you where you can find that in case you're looking for that option. You can also log out if you are logged in, or you can sign up for an account if you are not logged in as well. Something else worth pointing out is that when you have a chat, you have the ability to type in text messages. If you're on a mobile phone as well, what you can do is you can actually speak to it, and it can do voice to text and then type in your text essentially as part of the conversation. There is also an ability right now on the mobile app to be able to have a dialogue, like a voice-to-voice conversation on it, although it's quite experimental, and that might be something that you try on once you're more comfortable with the tool. In addition to that, it supports a couple of file types. It supports Word documents, presentations, Excel, Google Sheet files, all that kind of stuff, and most importantly, it supports PDF files as well. In addition to that, something that we'll see a bit later on in the demo is that it's very good at also supporting images and being able to derive interpretation and meaning from them. So it can take in PNGs, it can take JPEGs, it can take SVGs, and so on. And all that will be essentially a hybrid conversation between text and these attachments that you provided. Now, one thing worth pointing out as well is the aspect of privacy. When I put in this information into this chatbot, where is my data going? And it's a very good question to ask. So similar to any application that you use on the internet, there is a server, there is a set of computers that are storing your data where this company is typically located. Now, we're used to having this for Facebook, Amazon, Google, these big companies, and ChatGPT's main company right now, the company that is around the product, is known as OpenAI. And part of their ownership is actually through Microsoft. So a lot of the time, where your data will end up is typically in a Microsoft server. There's an aspect of this that is important to note, that it is not recommended that you put in any private information or any credentials or anything that might be a potential security aspect, because it's a very early and experimental tool, and we still don't know the implications of what they're doing with this data. Now, according to their terms of service, if you are on a paid business plan, they will never use your data to train their new models and manipulate it and do stuff with it. So it always remains safe in the same way that your personal information is safe on a cloud website like Microsoft or Google and so on. But if you're on a free plan, there is an aspect of this where every part of the information that you're feeding is being used for a process known as retraining in artificial intelligence. Now, if it's something that could be publicly found out about a customer, maybe it's on a website or something like that, it's not that important to feed it into this thing, because that information is already public and it's already part of the model typically. Whereas if it's something private that you would prefer never to make its way to the public side of the internet, I would encourage you either to purchase the business plan or stick to not putting any of that information in as well. So we're going to head back to the presentation, and we're going to start a set of small little demos essentially. Now, the first demo is one where we can use ChatGPT for copywriting. This is where we might be writing an email to a colleague, someone that we know, or someone that we work with, and we kind of want to use this AI assistant to write that email a little bit better. So you don't have to read this email. You can pause the video if you'd like, but just to give you kind of a high-level overview, this email is for an HVAC installation that has been delayed 2 weeks. We have to communicate this information to a potential stakeholder. The new equipment will be arriving in a couple of days. And until then, what we also have to communicate is that 60% of the ductwork has had an unexpected modification. There is additional costs that will likely be associated with this. And we probably need to set a meeting with the contractor and with the business owner to discuss the potential solution for something like this. But if you go back, this is a very lengthy way to write this basic information. Now, suppose you wrote this original one and you are looking to kind of identify for ways that you can cut it down. You can trim the fat, essentially. The prompt that we're going to use with ChatGPT is we're going to first paste in the entire original email. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to say, write this in a way that's more concise. I want exactly 3 paragraphs to kind of keep the structure there. I want you to focus on the key points that we're trying to communicate, and I want you to remove any unnecessary details. Now, something interesting to note is that I'm not telling it exactly how it's going to do this, or which specific parts are important or which parts are not important. It's going to find that out on its own. It's going to have to do a little bit of critical thinking, you could say, in order to achieve that. So getting back to the window right here, what we're going to do is we're going to take the email, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it right there. So that's the email that you saw a second ago. I'm going to leave a couple spaces right below it, and then I'm going to paste in the prompt, which says what we had said before. It says, please revise this email, be more concise, exactly 3 paragraphs, and so on. I'm going to type that in. And look how fast it is able to create that response, essentially. So take a look at this message. This message is a little bit lengthy, and the message that it's been able to start writing over here is already a bit shorter. So let's see how it did. The new email says, Dear Mike, I want you to inform you about the delays in the HVAC installation at Building C due to the equipment delivery and ductwork issues. Let's compare that with this. I wanted to reach you out regarding the ongoing HVAC installation project at Building C, which, as you probably already know, has been experiencing some delays in equipment delivery. Like, look at that. That's a run-on sentence that it's been able to fix into like a more concise kind of way of framing it. So there's a benefit that we see right there initially. Suppose, on the other hand, though, that while the improvement that it did is good, it's not as professional as we maybe need this email to be. Maybe this is going to an executive, or it's going to like a big stakeholder where remaining a little bit more professional is quite important. So we're going to revise the prompt into this ongoing chat, and we're going to say this time, revise the existing email. I want you to make it more professional. I want you to use industry terminology. I want you to keep a formal business tone, and I want you to enhance the clarity and the authority to make sure that it sounds like it's from one person of authority to another one, essentially. So getting back to the chat window, we're going to paste in the second prompt, as we said. Now notice this time, when we paste in the second prompt, we don't actually need to retype the entire email. It knows that what we're asking is based on the latest email that it provided. So it's going to iterate over that. So let's see how it changed this a little bit. I'm going to highlight specifically the third paragraph. It says, please let us know your availability this week or next week. I'm happy to prepare any specific documentation or cost breakdowns, In this case, it says, please advise me on your availability this week or early next week for a meeting to discuss these matters. I'm prepared to provide any necessary documentation, including a detailed cost breakdown and proposed adjustment plans, to facilitate a comprehensive review. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I look forward for your guidance into the next steps. Now, what did it do here? It's important to note that it made the email slightly longer. It's not as long, and it doesn't have these run-on sentences as the original one did, but what it does have is sentences that are a tiny bit longer, but use more formal language. So it's a sacrifice that we've had to make, but in the process, we did arrive at something that has more authority to it in that tone of voice, and then it has that more formality and professionalism, essentially. Suppose for a final and third prompt, what we want to do actually is the complete opposite. This is a coworker or a stakeholder who we have years of experience working together. So we don't really need to create all these niceties and this formal language, this Shakespearean language, you could say. We can make this as simple as possible and hopefully just a couple lines. So we're going to ask it just to do that and see how it kind of behaves. We're going to say, revise the existing one, keep it concise, more authentic in tone, clear and simple sentences, and avoid any corporate jargon, like it's one person talking to another. So getting back to the tool, we're going to paste in that final prompt. So you see there it goes. And we're going to reread this a little bit. It says, "Hi Mike, I want to touch base about some delays with the HVAC installation. The air handling units are now set to arrive on the 15th, which is about 2 weeks later than planned." So you can see like it cut it down a lot. This is kind of the simplest implementation of it. And the cool thing is you can continue this process over and over again until you get something that you like, or you can kind of take this, put it back into your email provider and send this off essentially. So some takeaways from this first demo would be the following. You can take an email that's a little bit complex or messy, and then you can actually improve the format, the sentence structure, but also the tone, the style, and the authenticity to it. There's all these different mechanisms that you can use the input to provide more detailed instructions to arrive specifically at what it is that you're looking for, essentially. We're going to jump straight into the second demo, which is a slightly different demo. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to take an image of a technical diagram. So in this case, it's going to be a mechanical diagram for a P-trap system. Now, a P-trap system is a fitting for a plumbing system for homes. And we're going to pretend like we don't know what this is, right? We're going to pretend like we maybe received this diagram from a colleague, or maybe it was an email, and we need to use this tool to be able to identify it. Maybe down the line we have this for something that's a little bit more complicated, but this is the example that we're going to give today. Now, to make sure I don't kind of cheat the system here and to make sure that we keep the realness of this demo is I'm going to search up for this photo in real time. So I'm going to search up for P-trap. We're going to go into images, and then we are going to take this diagram right here. If I open it in full size, you see that there's no part of here where it says what kind of system this is or what it is whatsoever. And that's what we're going to try to see how it behaves. So the cool thing is, while you can upload the JPEG files or the PNG files and so on, what I can do also is click copy image and then paste it in here directly. But before we do that, we're actually going to start a new chat to keep the conversation separate. So I'm going to click Control V to paste it. I'm going to close these windows. And in addition to that, going back here, showcasing the image that we've selected right now, the first prompt that I'm going to do is the following. I'm simply going to ask, what is this? What does it do? And does it have any technical terms attached to it? Now again, ChatGPT has never seen this image before. So it has to take an image, it has to kind of look at it, it has to try to understand it, and then it has to use its knowledge base to be able to see what it's kind of like, to be able to find these things like, okay, I think this is the technical aspect of it, this is how it works, and so on. So there's a lot of intelligence, a lot of micro steps involved in this process. So again, what is this? What does it do? What are the technical terms attached to it? And here it goes. Now here's the answer that we get. It says, this diagram shows a typical sink drain assembly referring to as a P-trap system. So it got it right, first of all. It is designed to connect the sink's tailpiece to the waste outlet that enters the wall or the floor. Here's a breakdown related to the terminology. And the amazing thing is that it's able to generate a set of components and some brief information about how these different components work. In addition to that, it provides a short little summary about the purpose of what this is and some technical considerations if you were kind of using this or implementing this and so on. We're going to move on to a prompt that is slightly more difficult. In this case, what we're going to say is the following. Explain this in detail. I want you to identify the key components, describe how it works in detail, provide any relevant and local code requirements for where we are, and provide any best practices for installation. So we go back here into the existing conversation, and I'm going to say the following. Expand on each area in much more detail and provide any relevant code or legal requirements for its implementation/installation. So here we go. Notice the difference between the first answer and this following one. It's kind of doing this search on it and this answer where it gives you a high-level overview of what it is that you asked it about. And only until you want to probe it to expand on some certain areas does it begin to do that. So in this case, I wanted to learn more about the assembly of the components, like what each component constitutes from a material standpoint, from a purpose standpoint, and so on. And it provided just that. Here's the tailpiece, here's the purpose of it, here's the material, here's like the length, and so on. It does that for all the different components. It goes quite a bit into the details. It also says here are some additional installation considerations and best practices related to the ventilation, the clearance, and the spacing, and so on. So you can see there's a lot of useful information right there. Something worth looking at as well is that in each component, it provided a code and legal requirements. So for example, for the tailpiece, it states right here, according to the BC Plumbing Code, it requires that any piping fitting together is connected to the drainage system and must comply with the CSA standards for pipe materials. And it provides some more information. If we wanted that information specifically, again, remember, we have this conversation ability where we can ask it to expand on that specific section. So the takeaways from a demo like this one are the following. You can take an image that is completely unknown to the system. It may be completely unknown to you as well. And then you can ask it simply to identify what it is, and it will give you a very good answer. In addition to that, you can ask it to expand on specific parts of the answer that it gave you, or to expand and teach you a little bit about the technical side of it. And you can continue this dialogue as a conversation with follow-on questions, essentially endlessly. You can continue this as long as you need. So you can use this as a mechanism to learn and inquire more about a specific topic.